What's up, y'all? It's RenaMarq. And yeah, I'm back to just yapping. You ever watch an award show and just know exactly who should win? Not because you're a fan, not because you're biased, but because sometimes it's just obvious. Like, so obvious if they don't win, something is seriously wrong. And then that moment comes. You see them on the nominations. You kind of already know the win is a shoe-in. Then the presenter comes out on stage. The envelope opens. And somehow, some way, the artist who had the biggest cultural impact, the actor who delivered the most powerful performance, the show that redefined its genre, loses. This isn't about opinions or who voters prefer. It's about patterns. That's what I'm yapping about today. The systemic black snub. Every year, we sit through the Grammys, the Oscars, the Emmys, and the same black artists who shaped these industries walk away empty handed. It's Beyonce, losing Album of the Year 4 times. It's Angela Bassett, giving career defining performances and still not winning. It's Damson Idris, never even getting nominated for one of the best TV performances in years. It's Martin, shaping an entire era of comedy and never winning a single Emmy. So what does that tell us? And y'all know I got my script. It tells us that these institutions, these so-called gatekeepers of excellence, were never made for black people. They'll let us in the room, but they'll never give us the key. They'll celebrate our talent, but they won't validate it. And that's because our success only feels comfortable to them when it's packaged in a way that doesn't threaten the status quo. And if there's one artist who perfectly represents this dynamic, one artist who bodies of work are so high regarded, but the recognition that she gets from this institution is never quite there. You guessed it. The most awarded artist in Grammy history, Beyonce. But somehow, one award that should be given for her incredible bodies of work that will define those incredible bodies of work, she just now won it for the first time. And that's not an accident. Beyonce, with over 30 wins, she has more trophies than any other singer. But she has just this year won Album of the Year for the first time. That's not an accident. Despite being recognized in categories like Best R&B Album and Best Urban Contemporary Album, the Grammys have consistently refused to acknowledge her in their most prestigious category. Instead, they reserve that honor for white artists, even when Beyonce albums dominate the cultural conversation. Take Lemonade, for example. This was more than just an album. It was a moment in history. It was a bold artistic statement that tackled black womanhood, infidelity, and a just generational trauma through masterful storytelling. From the visuals to the music, every piece of Lemonade was meticulously crafted, elevating what an album could be. But when it lost Album of the Year to Adele's 25, the outrage was immediate. And I love Adele's 25. Even Adele herself admitted the win didn't feel right, dedicating her speech to Beyonce and acknowledging that Lemonade was more deserving. Sounds familiar, right? Remember Macklemore? Kendrick Lamar? Interesting. Fast forward to 2023, and history repeated itself. Renaissance, an album that celebrated house music, ballroom culture, and black queer artistry, was widely expected to win Album of the Year. Got people dancing, coming out of the pandemic, everybody feeling sluggish. But this time, when it lost to Harry's House by Harry Styles, the shock was different. There was no apologetic winner, no moment of acknowledgement, just a glaring reminder that Beyonce, no matter how revolutionary her work is, will always be denied that final validation. And even when she ventures into country music, a genre deeply rooted in Black history, let me say that again, deeply rooted in Black history, she's met with even more resistance. Her song, Texas Hold'em, shot to #1, yet country radio stations initially refused to play it. Despite praise from country icons like Dolly Parton, Reba McEntire, Beyonce still faces gatekeeping yet another space that should welcome her. It's a pattern that proves Black artists can succeed at the highest level, but when it comes to the biggest awards, they are still expected to stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Beyonce's Grammy losses proves that Black artists can be the most awarded, the most successful, the most innovative, and still be shut out of the biggest prize. But sometimes the snub isn't just about losing. Sometimes the industry pretends you don't even exist. And no one knows that feeling better than The Weeknd. Let's talk about 2021. That year, no artist was bigger than The Weeknd. Not a one. He had the biggest song of the decade, a critically acclaimed album that dominated streaming and sales, and he performed at the Super Bowl, arguably the biggest stage in music. By any logical measure, he should have been a lock for multiple Grammy nominations, right? Wrong. Because yet, when the nominations came out, not a single one, 0. And let's be clear, Blinding Lights wasn't just a hit, it was historic. It became the longest charting song in Billboard Hot 100 history. And After Hours wasn't just a popular album, it was a sonic reinvention of pop music, fusing 80s synthwave with modern R&B in a way that kind of reshaped the genre a bit. Some people are still trying to replicate that album. The Grammys had recognized far less successful albums before. So why not this one? One of the main reasons, according to Behind the Scenes, the reason for the snub had nothing to do with quality. The Weeknd had been given an ultimatum. Yo, perform at the Super Bowl or perform at the Grammys. He chose the Super Bowl, like most people would. And suddenly he was erased from the nominations entirely. The message was clear. These institutions don't just want talent, they want control. If you don't play by their rules, you don't get a seat at the table. And The Weeknd wasn't the first black artist to call them out. Nicki Minaj, Frank Ocean, Drake have all pointed out how these award shows use black artists for ratings but refuse to reward them. It's the same cycle. Let them perform, let them bring in viewers, let them give the show credibility, and then when it's time to give out the rewards, watch this shit. Pretend they were never there. And Beyonce and The Weeknd are not alone. Because even when black artists do get nominations, the industry makes sure to keep them in a box. The music industry has been boxing black artists into categories for decades, making sure their success is contained. Even when an artist creates something entirely new, something that defies genre, the industry finds a way to keep them in a specific lane. Because God forbid a black artist be recognized for anything other than what they've been labeled as. Just ask Tyler the Creator. And damn, Tyler the Creator summed it up perfectly. When black artists push boundaries and create genre-defying work, they are still forced into categories that minimize their artistic range. This happened to him in 2020, when he won Best Rap Album for Igor. An album that wasn't really a rap album at all. Of course it had some rap in it, but it was experimental, melodic, genre blending, pulling from synth pop, jazz, funk. And yet, despite its clear departure from traditional rap, the Grammys refused to consider it for Album of the Year, or even Best Pop Album. During his acceptance speech, Tyler did call it out. Tyler didn't shy away from calling this out. He acknowledged how black artists are often pigeonholed. Whenever we do something genre blending, they always put it in a rap or urban category. And the word urban itself has long been a coded way of segregating black music from the mainstream. While white artists can experiment with multiple genres and be celebrated for their innovation, black artists are often forced into narrow definitions of what they're allowed to be. This practice goes beyond the Grammys. Black artists in rock, pop, and country face the same industry resistance. When Lil Nas X released Old Town Road, the country charts initially refused to recognize it as a country song until Billy Ray Cyrus joined the remix. The industry's message was clear. Black artists can create groundbreaking work, but their success will always come with an asterisk. And this pattern isn't just in music. It's not. The same thing happens in television. Black actors deliver performances that redefine storytelling itself. Yet, year after year, they are ignored. Damson Idris is one of the clearest examples of this. Damson Idris delivered one of the best television performances in recent years as Franklin Saint in Snowfall. You know who that is. You've seen at least one of the memes. Him, her, him. That's Damson Idris. Just because you don't like the way another nigga talk, that's Damson Idris. You've seen it before, now you recognize it? Over 6 seasons, his portrayal of a young drug dealer navigating the complexities of the 1980s crack epidemic was gripping, intense, and transformative. Yet, despite the show's widespread acclaim, Idris was never even nominated for an Emmy. Now let's compare this to white-led crime dramas like Breaking Bad or The Sopranos, which were showered with nominations and wins. Rightfully so, because they're both amazing shows. Bryan Cranston and James Gandolfini were rightly praised for their performances, but it raises the question, why isn't Damson Idris getting the same recognition? Is it because his character is a young black man from South Central Los Angeles? Is it because the industry still struggles to view black-led narratives as worthy of prestige? The Emmys have long had a problem with recognizing black-led television. Even shows like Atlanta and Insecure have received some nominations, but consistently fall short of major wins. Even a cultural phenomenon like The Wire, widely regarded as one of the greatest TV shows of all time, was ignored by the Emmys during its whole run. This reveals a deeper issue. Black excellence on television isn't just snubbed, it's systematically overlooked. And if you think this is only about black-led dramas, think again. Some of the most influential comedies of all time, black sitcoms that shaped culture, have been completely erased from award history. TV and music awards always had glaring racial biases. Black-led sitcoms, despite shaping pop culture and influencing generations of comedians, have been consistently overlooked by institutions like the Emmys. And this isn't just about individual snubs. It's about the erasure of entire genres of black creativity. Take Martin, one of the most beloved sitcoms of the 90s. The show was a cultural juggernaut, blending slapstick humor, social commentary, and larger-than-life characters in a way that no other sitcom had done before. It was a rating success, a fan favorite, and is still referenced in pop culture to this day. Yet it never received a single Emmy nomination, not a one. Compare that to Friends, which aired during the same era and was more so showered with nominations and wins, despite borrowing heavily from black sitcoms that came before it. Living Single, anybody? And this isn't to say Friends wasn't deserving of praise. It was, to some. But the discrepancy in recognition highlights a bias in how far the industry values different types of storytelling. The same can be said for The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And I know y'all know that one. Despite being one of the most iconic sitcoms of all time, featuring a career-defining performance from Will Smith, the show received minimal Emmy recognition. The only major nomination came in '96 when Will Smith was nominated for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series. Guess what? He lost. Meanwhile, shows with predominantly white cast, some of which had fewer cultural and comedic impacts, were celebrated year after year. Even in the 2000s and beyond, black sitcoms continued to be sidelined. Everybody Hates Chris, based on Chris Rock's childhood, was one of the smartest and most original comedies of that time. It captured the struggles of growing up as a black kid in a predominantly white school. It had sharp humor, emotional depth. But Emmy nominations? None for acting. None. None for writing. None. None for directing. Not a one. Even Atlanta, one of the most critically acclaimed comedies of the past decade, faced resistance. While Donald Glover won Best Actor and Best Directing Emmys in 2017, the show itself never won Best Comedy Series, an award frequently handed to shows like Veep, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and Ted Lasso. And I fuck with those shows. I do. But despite being a game changer in television, Atlanta was treated as an anomaly rather than the new gold standard. The erasure of black sitcoms from award history speaks to a broader issue. Hollywood often views black comedy for something for us rather than the mainstream. These shows are celebrated within the black community but are rarely given the industry-wide prestige that they deserve. They are labeled as urban, cult classics, or cultural phenomena, but never simply the best. And yet, the influence of these shows is undeniable. Modern sitcoms from Abbott Elementary to Insecure owe a debt to the black sitcoms that came before them. And trust me, I know Abbott Elementary stems a lot from The Office and Parks and Rec. Of course I know that. But still, it's a black show. They have redefined humor, storytelling, and representation on TV, even if the Emmys refuse to acknowledge it. The industry's refusal to award black sitcoms isn't just about comedy. It's about control. Because to truly recognize the genius of black television would mean admitting that the traditional narrative of TV history is incomplete. It would mean acknowledging that the shows that shaped the culture, the ones that broke boundaries, and the ones that still resonate decades later, were often the ones that Hollywood refused to honor in their time. But this isn't new. Oh no. Hollywood has a history of snubbing black excellence, not just in television, not just in music, but also in film. Especially when it comes to black women. Let's talk Angela Bassett. Angela Bassett is one of the most respected and accomplished actresses of her generation. Name 5 better. Name 5 better in the comments right now. Think of 5 better than Angela Bassett. Her ability to completely transform into characters she plays, her command of the screen, and the sheer emotional depth she brings to every role makes her a cinematic powerhouse. Yet, despite decades of groundbreaking performances, the Academy has refused to give her the recognition she deserves. Twice. She has been nominated for an Oscar twice. She has lost twice. Despite delivering performances that were literally career-defining. Her first major Oscar snub came in '94. Angela Bassett's portrayal of Tina Turner in What's Love Got to Do With It was nothing short of extraordinary. She embodied Turner's voice, mannerisms, and pain with such intensity that audience and critics alike were literally blown away. Not only that, but the physicality of the role alone, learning to move, dance, and sing like Tina Turner, was worthy of acclaim. But what made her performance unforgettable was how she conveyed the deep emotional scars of Turner's abusive relationship and rise to superstardom. She gave us a performance that was raw, authentic, and powerful. Yet, when the Oscar for Best Actress was announced, it went to Holly Hunter for The Piano. A performance that, while strong, did not hold the same cultural or emotional weight. Fast forward nearly 3 decades to 2023. Angela Bassett was once again nominated for an Oscar, this time for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. She became the first person in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to be nominated for an acting Oscar. And that was a fight. I remember the talk of that. When people were like, just because they're superhero movies don't mean they don't put on great performances. Why are they not getting nominated? She broke through the mold. She did it. Proving that her performance as Queen Ramonda transcended the superhero genre. In the film, she delivered an emotionally devastating performance, particularly in the scene where she grieves the loss of her son T'Challa. And we all knew the weight of that with the tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace. That moment alone solidified her place as the front runner for Best Supporting Actress. When the award was given to Jamie Lee Curtis for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, even looking on screen, you can see the air in the room shifted. The camera panned to Angela Bassett, whose face was stoic but deeply telling. She had been here before. She had given another breathtaking performance only to be overlooked again. The discourse that followed was intense. Many argued that Curtis, while an industry veteran, had not given the standout supporting performance of the year. The Academy's decision once again reinforced a harsh reality. Black women in Hollywood are expected to deliver legendary performances without expecting the industry to reward them accordingly. Angela, that just pissed me off again. But Angela Bassett's 2 Oscar losses are not just personal snubs. They reflect the larger pattern of how the Academy treats black women in film. Still to this day, Halle Berry remains the only black woman to have ever won Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress, respective category. The wins are few and far between. The industry has no problem celebrating black women's performances in retrospect, giving them lifetime achievement or honorary Oscars. But when it comes to actually awarding them for their best work in the moment, they hesitate. The message is clear. Excellence is not enough. And it's not just the performances of the individuals. The Academy has a long history of sidelining black filmmakers, especially those who dare to challenge the system. No one knows this better than the icon, the legend, Spike Lee. If you want to understand the Academy's reluctance to reward black filmmakers, look no further than Spike. One of the most influential directors of all time. Full stop. Spike has shaped modern cinema with his bold storytelling, unique visual style, and fearless exploration of race in America. His films are more than just entertainment. They are cultural statements that challenged audiences to confront uncomfortable truths. And yet, for decades, the Academy refused to give him his due. The most egregious snub in Spike's career came in 1990, and you know the movie I'm talking about, Do the Right Thing. They didn't. The film, now considered one of the greatest ever made, was a masterful exploration of racial tension in Brooklyn on the hottest day of the summer. It was visually innovative, narratively gripping, and socially urgent at that time. If you go to film school, everybody knows Do the Right Thing. And most times, a teacher will tell you that's one to watch. A professor will tell you that's one to watch, for sure. But yet, when the Oscar nominations were announced, Lee was shut out. Spike was shut out of Best Director and Best Picture. Instead, Best Picture went to Driving Miss Daisy, a film about race, sure enough, but that comforted white audiences instead of challenging them. And this decision wasn't just a snub, it was a statement. The Academy was more willing to reward a film that depicted a sanitized, feel-good version of race than one that confronted the raw realities of racial injustice. It set a precedent. Black filmmakers who challenged the status quo will be ignored, while those who played it safe might stand a chance. Spike continued making groundbreaking films, by the way. Clockers, 25th Hour, Inside Man, Malcolm X. And yet the Academy still refused to recognize his work with major nominations. In 2016, after decades of being overlooked, the Academy finally gave him an honorary Oscar. While meant as a recognition of his contributions to cinema, it felt like a consolation prize, which they always do, because they always are. A way of acknowledging his influence without ever actually awarding him for his best work. It wasn't until 2019, nearly 30 years after Do the Right Thing was snubbed, that Spike finally won his first competitive Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay for BlacKkKlansman. When he took the stage, his excitement was palpable, but so was his frustration. He made it clear that this win was long overdue, and it was reminding the audience that change in Hollywood doesn't come unless people demand it. Even with his win, the Academy's treatment of Spike reflects a broader issue. Black filmmakers who create uncompromising, politically charged work are often left out of the highest honors. Directors like Ava DuVernay, Ryan Coogler, Barry Jenkins have all faced similar treatment, delivering some of the best films of their respective years only to be snubbed in major categories. And then there's Jordan Peele, who made history with Get Out, a film that was undeniably the most talked about and dissected movie of 2017. While he did win Best Original Screenplay, many felt that Best Picture should have gone to Get Out instead of Shape of Water. And Shape of Water was great. Even when black filmmakers break barriers, the industry finds ways to temper their victories. Spike's career is a case study in how the Academy controls the narrative of cinematic excellence. If you're a black filmmaker pushing boundaries, your work will be celebrated after the fact, but rarely in real time. The industry would rather recognize you decades later, once your impact is undeniable, than acknowledge you when you're actually making history. Because to truly reward black filmmakers in the moment would mean admitting that the traditional gatekeepers of Hollywood have been wrong all along. The industry's exclusion of black talent isn't just something we noticed in passing. It became so blatant, it became a movement. Y'all know the movement? Hashtag Oscars So White. By 2015, the Academy had snubbed so many black actors, directors, and creatives that it sparked a full-blown movement. Oscars So White, the hashtag created by activist April Reign, wasn't just a critique of single-year nominations. It was a reckoning with the Academy's decades-long history of exclusion. When the 2015 nominations were announced, all 20 acting nominees were white. Films like Selma, a critically acclaimed historical drama directed by Ava DuVernay, were almost entirely shut out, with only a Best Picture nomination and Best Original Song win. DuVernay wasn't even nominated for Best Director, despite crafting one of the most important films of that year. The outrage over the 2015 snubs built momentum. But when the exact same thing happened again in 2016, another year of all-white acting nominees, the movement exploded. Celebrities, filmmakers, and audience demanded change. Major stars like Will and Jada Pinkett Smith, even Spike, announced that they were boycotting the ceremony. And while Chris Rock was there, because he was the host that year, he used his opening monologue to call out the Academy's racism in his signature satirical style. And the backlash forced the Academy to take action. They implemented new diversity initiatives, pledging to double the number of women and underrepresented minorities within their voting body by 2020. They introduced new rules to make membership more inclusive, ensuring that the old guard of predominantly white male voters would no longer be the only voices shaping the industry's highest honors. At first, it seemed like the movement had a tangible impact. Moonlight, an independent film by Barry Jenkins about Black queer identity, won Best Picture in 2017. Though, even that victory was overshadowed by the infamous mix-up where La La Land was mistakenly announced as the winner first. Had everybody on that stage looking stupid. In 2019, Spike Lee finally won his first competitive Oscar for Black Klansman. In 2021, Daniel Kaluuya won for Judas and the Black Messiah, and Nomadland's director Chloe Zhao became the first woman of color to win Best Director. But despite these steps forward, Oscars So White wasn't just about one or two wins. It was about systemic change. And the truth is, while the Academy has made some progress, the pattern of exclusion remains. Even in the years where Black artists win, there were still egregious omissions. In 2023, Viola Davis and Daniel Deadwyler, who both gave powerhouse performances in The Woman King and Till, respectively, were completely shut out of the nominations, sparking another round of backlash. The movement also revealed an even deeper truth. The Oscars and award shows in general are not just about recognizing excellence. I say it again. They are about controlling the narrative of what is considered prestigious and important. By keeping Black filmmakers and actors on the margins, the Academy maintains a status quo where white-led films are positioned as the pinnacle of cinema, while Black stories are treated as niche, secondary, or only worthy of recognition when they fit within a limited framework, such as slavery narratives or trauma-focused storytelling. Oscars So White forced a conversation that Hollywood could no longer ignore. But it also proved that systemic change requires more than just surface-level fixes. The Academy may have promised diversity, but as long as Black artists are still fighting to be seen and heard, the industry remains just as exclusionary as it has always been. We spend years calling out award shows for shutting out Black artists, for ignoring our impact, for using us for ratings and tossing us aside when it was time to hand out the biggest awards. And in 2025, when the tides finally shifted, when Beyonce, Doechii, SZA, and Kendrick Lamar won big, the backlash wasn't just loud. No. It was revealing. For years, people excused Grammy snubs by saying, well, maybe they just didn't deserve it. But what happened in 2025 proved that for a lot of people, it was never about deserving. It was about controlling who gets to win. Because the moment multiple Black artists took home major awards, the conversation shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't about talent or impact. It was about how the Grammys had gone too far. Think about what that means. When white artists dominate, it's seen as natural, objective, deserved. But when Black artists succeed at the same level, it's pandering, it's forced diversity, it's politics ruining art, it's woke. Their definition of woke. The backlash wasn't just about these wins, it was about what these wins represented. Because it isn't just about the Grammys. It's about a larger cultural shift. Because for some people, a system that benefits them feels neutral. But when that same system finally acknowledges Black talent, suddenly it's broken. The backlash to the 2025 Grammys wasn't just about awards, y'all. It was about entitlement. It was about certain people feel like they own these spaces and that Black artists should only win in small, digestible doses. But let's be real, this isn't new. Every time black excellence push through, the industry finds a new way to minimize their wins. Minimize. You see, I'm on my yap today. The system isn't just resistant to change, it fights back when we demand it, and 2025 was no different, even when we took the big W's home. Because for them, success only feels fair when it excludes us. The Grammys, like every institution we done talked about, was never built to celebrate black talent equally. It allows us to just enough recognition to keep us engaged, but never enough to shift the power dynamic. And when we finally break through, they make sure to recognize that our success isn't welcome. Great example of that, Sidney Poitier. The backlash to the 2025 Grammys wasn't about fairness. It was about fear. Fear that black artists winning means others are losing something. Fear that an industry that has long profited off black creativity might actually have to start giving it the credit it deserves. And that fear, that's exactly why this fight isn't over. And that's the real game, isn't it? These award shows don't just snub black talent, they use us. They'll put us on stage. They let us perform, let us bring in viewers, let us give their show credibility. But when it's time to hand out the biggest awards, they remind us who they think really deserves them. If you want an entertaining performance of that story, Kendrick Lamar, Super Bowl performance. That storytelling talks about that game perfectly. Because it's a bigger game than just industry. It's an American game. In 2025, we saw what happens when that dynamic is challenged. And the reaction to it told us everything we already knew. They don't want us to win. They want us to keep playing. Like I said, shout out to Kendrick Lamar for the Super Bowl performance. Masterful. After all these examples, after Beyonce, Angela Bassett, Spike Lee, Damson Idris, Tyler, The Weeknd, Martin, in the entire history of black talent being ignored, one thing is clear. The system isn't broken. It was built this way, and we all know that. Every year we hope things will change. We hope that maybe this time the right person will win, the right body of work will win, the right cinematic or audio masterpiece will win. That maybe this time they'll finally see the brilliance that we've seen all along. Even when we finally feel like they do, we're reminded that these institutions were never designed to truly celebrate us. Black excellence don't need these awards to prove our excellence. I know that. Trust me, I know that. We don't need their trophies to validate our impact. Trust me, I know that. But let's be clear. These institutions do need us. They use black talent for credibility, to give the show soul, to bring in viewers. They'll celebrate us in the opening act, but when it comes to the biggest awards, they'll do their best to leave us empty-handed. They all want us in the room just to shut the door in all of our faces at once. All because they don't want to share the achievements. They just want to share the culture. To some people, I hope y'all really listen with an open mind. And if anything, I'm always willing to continue the conversation. But who knows? To others, maybe I'm just yapping. I'm RenaMarq. Peace.